I've already made mention in the early part of this program about the fact that the Bible still does contain many enigmatic phrases and passages that allude to what we were talking about in terms of the ancient cults. Now, in John 14, we also read one of these most enigmatic passages. It says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also." Now, Jordan Maxwell has pointed out in his work that this term, like many passages in the Bible, have just blatantly misinterpreted. I mean, obviously we should realize that it's impossible to have many mansions in a house. But you could have many rooms in a house. You could have many compartments of a house. You could have many houses in the sky, like in the zodiac. Could the mansion be the heavens, the dome of the heavens, the great theater of the mysteries? And within that theater, that great mansion, there could be many houses. Well, that's, in our belief, what that passage actually refers to. It refers to the zodiac and the houses there. It refers to the girdle of Isis, the girdle of the goddess Nuth. We understand that the 12 tribes of Israel, there's the number 12, is another allusion to the zodiac. And the Hebrews had a wall, great and high, and had 12 gates. And at the gates 12 angels, and names were written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And anyone who knows anything about Hebrew astrology or the tribes of Israel know that all the symbols of the tribes of Israel were the astrological signs. Rabbis admit this. There's books on Hebrew astrology showing you that you not only have 12 tribes, but the symbols of each of the tribes of Israel are astrological symbols. And they were great worshippers of certain feast days throughout the year. Now, well, when it comes to the number 12, we're in a whole incredible subject there. We got not only the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 hours, the 12 months. At Catholic confirmation is at age 12, the ceremony to represent full circle of the zodiac. You have a confirmation ceremony. We've got jury members with the judge, the magistrate being the 13th member, representing the occult 13th sign of the zodiac. We've got the 12 patriarchs of Israel, the 12 brothers of Joseph, the 12 stages of the underworld process in Egypt. We've got 12 stages of the mummification process, a very rigorous idea there in mummification that you should have 12 stages. Egypt itself was divided into 12 provinces, one for each of the signs of the zodiac. In the primal conflict between Set and Osiris, when Osiris is finally killed, we find that he's cut up into 12 pieces, the body of the hero. 12 stones is what Moses erects for the tribes. Arthur had 12 knights. Balder, in Scandinavian mythology, had 12 judges. Odysseus had 12 companions. Romulus, 12 shepherds. Roland, in French, a troubadour tradition, had 12 peers. Jacob had 12 sons. Hrolf, in the Danish myths, had 12 berserkers. There's 12 Aesir, that's the god of the high Teutons. In the octave, we have 12 notes. And in the brain, we have 12 cranial nerves. We'll come back to that later on. But Jesus and his 12 helpers is the most common one to people, the apostles. But again, we have a message here. If you actually look at the symbolic way that this was communicated to us by the artists, like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the other medieval and Mannerist painters, we'll notice something very interesting. In Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, for instance, we understand that we have Jesus at the Last Supper, and we understand that Jesus is the Son. But if you actually examine this remarkable painting closely, you'll find something enigmatic. The 12 are not just loosely grouped around the Son, around Jesus Christ. There's a pattern to them. They're in groups of 3. And those groups of 3 represent the seasons. They represent the zodiological signs. But the zodiological signs are, of course, aligned with the months. So the group on the far left, and each group is only speaking to itself. They're all communicating only to themselves. So let's say that summer, autumn, winter, and spring, autumn, summer, winter, whatever way you want to look at it, that's what we're seeing as the real theme in this fine painting. The 12, but the actual divisions of the seasons. Because we understand that in the center is the Christ, the enlightened one, the Son, who will come again. That means he'll go round and round and round, right? Only to come again every day in the diurnal cycle and also in the zodiacal cycle of the year. When you see the great temples and cathedrals, churches of the world, you'll always notice the 12 panes of the rose windows. Again, a commemoration to the stellar cult. The idea of the round table of ancient times. They sat at a round table to emphasize that the real round table was up above your head. It was literally the zodiac. And we turn to the Celtic calendar, we find the heart of the stellar and lunar paradigm. Not only do you find the 12 or occasionally 13 signs, but we also find that these signs were related to Earth. Each of the signs of the zodiac were not so much given an animal motif as they are today. They were assigned to the 12 trees. So the idea of the tree of life being a very important motif and also connecting to the Earth. The worship of the trees was an original zodiac. When we study the Celtic seasonal cycle, we find the great feast days, which were later transfigured or transposed into some of the modern holidays. If you've read any of the fine books on this subject or researched this subject, Robert Graves and Caitlin Matthews, lots of books out there on the subject, you'll start to understand a couple of things, and that is that the calendar was changed. It was altered from a stellar to a solar-centric one. That we have different stories going on. The calendar year's opening date was artificially also changed. That the saints' days were merely superimposed upon more ancient sidereal festivals. And the most important one is that there was a supplantation of the feminine principle. There was the masculinization of the deities and the iconic symbols. That last one there is an entire subject in itself that I deal with more elaborately in the other program in this series called Divination and the Goddess Tradition. This whole idea of the masculinization and slow subversion of the feminine principle, which in turn has horrific ramifications for human consciousness and for gender relations and so on. Now, David Duncan, in his book The Calendar, says that from the beginning, the Roman calendar was a powerful political tool that governed religious holidays, festivals, market days, and constantly changing schedules of days when it was legal to conduct judicial and official business in the courts and governments. The inaccurate calendar played havoc not only with the farmers and sailors, but also with the population becoming more dependent than ever on trade, commerce, law, and civil administration in a rapidly growing empire that desperately needed a standard system of measuring time. So what David Duncan is telling us is that we were not just given a set of time, a calendar, which is of course needed. We were given this hybrid, this concoction that was so off the wall that the ancient people found it very confusing. Scholars like Joseph Campbell have always mentioned anyway that the very language of the Bible is a mercantile language. He brought that out. Many have noticed this. Because yes, there was a paradigm shift when the Saturnian and the solar cult are becoming dominant. It's less and less and less to do about your empowerment and religion and true worship of God. No, it's got more to do with subjugation. Of course the calendar had to be changed because we're not meant to be worshiping nature. We're not meant to be worshiping and believing in the real. We're meant to be dumbed down and in total servitude. And one of the best ways to do that was to subvert time and to subvert the calendar. But evidences of the stellar cult are to be found on all the flags of the world. Children always remark, why are these stars on these flags? Even from childhood you notice that. Yes, well, why indeed? Why would the flags of nations have this motif so prevalent all over the world, the stars? Even the European Union's flag has 12 stars representing the zodiac. We've got rising suns, we've got crescent moons, we've got stars. Well, the reason is what we're telling you here, that the whole idea is that when you realize that all the modern establishments and institutes and paradigms come out of the stellar and solar and lunar cult, now we can understand why we see these motifs. The California flag of America Everyone thinks it shows the grizzly bear and the red star, and yet it does not. This is yet another cryptic device. What it refers to is the bear, yes, but it's the bear up there. The red star is the pole star around which moves Ursa Major, the bear. What you're actually seeing on the California flag is nothing less than an astro-theological motif disguised to look like something else. Now the Egyptians, unlike us today, did not open their year at December 21st or January 1st, or even where astrologers are wont to think of the beginning of the zodiac, which is Aries. No, their year opened in the sign of Virgo, which in those days, because of processional movement of the heavens, was around July 20th, 25th. This is when the Nile started to rise and the flood waters began to rise. That was around about the period when Sirius, the star, was high in the sky, around the July 20th and 25th, the season. And that was the sun would rise into the constellation or sign of Virgo. And of Virgo is, of course, the sign of the Virgin, which has always been depicted for ancient times as the female goddess or the female queen, the beautiful virgin, Virgo. Well, of course, naturally, if the year for the Egyptians opened in Virgo, then like ours, we have 12 seasons, 12 months to go through until the year closes. And the year will close, logically, in the sign before Virgo. And the sign before Virgo, just pick up a coffee table book on astrology or log on to the internet and look up, and you'll see that the sign that comes before Virgo is Leo the lion. Leo the lion was then the closing of the year. So that is why you have a sphinx, because it is the head of the Virgin and the tail of a lion, meaning in one symbol. And this is the way the ancients did things, so beautifully, so figuratively. The idea is that the head of the female looks out to the horizon, her gaze follows the whole earth, which is circular, and comes back to the body of the lion. It is simply a symbol of the zodiac. It's a symbol of the zodiac in sandstone, standing 66 feet high. And all it is to tell you is that we were astrologers. We were the Magi. So the first sign of the zodiac, Virgo, the sign of the Virgin. The last sign of the zodiac, Leo. Put them together and you've got the Sphinx. Virgo was the female, the virgin, holding the sheaf of wheat. Now the sun entered the sign of Virgo around July 25th. Upon entering this female sign, the ancient cosmologists said that the sun, that's the Son of God, the heavens, was born again, born of a virgin. That's where that term comes from. The Christian idea of being born of a virgin, one of the meanings of it, there are many. But in the stellar cult, it was the idea that the Son of God was now being born in the sign of the Virgin, or of a virgin. When the Sphinx was constructed, its visage even faced that part of the horizon where the constellations of Leo and Virgo rose at nightfall. So this face, the eyes were looking to the horizon, but at night, Virgo and Leo would rise right in front of the eyes of the Sphinx. Now, because the beginning of this zodiacal belt was in Virgo, the zodiac was called the girdle of Isis, the virgin goddess. She was the prototype of Mary. The son of Isis was Horus. Mary's son was Jesus. Horus was the basis of the Christ myth. His name meant light or sun, and that's where we get the word horizon, or the zone of Horus. And we also get hours from his name. And that's right. Horus's zone, that's the zone of the sun, when the sun rises on the horizon, it's the zone of Horus, the sun god, the horizon. The old word for prayers in the Shakespearean era was orisons, and we all know that we turn to the east. Cultures still do this. You turn to the east to say your prayers, your orisons. Why do you turn to the east? Because the sun is going to rise there. You worship the sun. It's a solar cult. And Horus, you just have to turn two of the letters around and you get hours, H-O-U-R-S. Because they used to say, to take the time, where is Horus now? Where is the golden falcon now? Meaning, what hour of the day is it? What Horus of the day is it? We even tell our children to be as good as gold, meaning be as good as the golden one, Horus. You are a youngster. A child is known as a young star. Like Horus was the youngster of Isis and Osiris. So just remember, when you hear that term, born of a virgin, think astrology. But again, we're being told this. You only have to look at the symbolism. Once you've opened your right brain, you're using your whole mind, you've learned some pattern recognition, you'll find that nothing's being concealed from you. Mother Mary with the sun above her head and the crescent moon under her feet. We have it in the corporate logos of today, Columbia Pictures. The Virgin with the sun gleaming behind her back, or holding the great torch. Literally, the sun in Virgo. What you're seeing in that logo is nothing more than an astrological motif. And if you've seen the subversive use of sacred symbolism, we go into this very much and show how so many corporate logos date from this, or come from this idea of the movement of the sun through the constellations. The original Madonna, born of a virgin. The solar cult get hold of this, and they move things around. Horus suddenly becomes more aligned with the sun, yes, but more aligned with, say, Aries. Jesus holding the Lamb of God. Everyone knows the Lamb or the Ram is the sign of Aries. So they move the Son of God away from Virgo and move it to a new place, a new identification. And that can be okay to do in some respects, but it's what the mythographers do every age. They change the symbolism. Once upon a time, the bull was worshipped and the cow goddess. That represents Taurus, the bull. Later on, the ram. Egypt's filled with the ram symbols because that's Aries. As the sun moves, the mythologies change. So the pyramid and the Sphinx and many of the other tombs and temples, structures, are patently astronomical and astrological. And even when you render or see the Sphinx rendered, you'll notice that it also has wings, or it might have claws, or it might have scales. It has the head of a woman, it has the tail of a dragon or a lion. Again, that just represents the four corners, the four coming together, the wings and the claws and the body of a lion, the cardinal points of the zodiac. Now, to make astronomy and astrology possible, that is to have a science or an art of astrology or astronomy, there are three basic celestial cycles or movements that must be taken into account. The first is the rotation of the Earth around the Sun. Okay, so that's a rotation we're talking about. There's three different kinds of rotation that make the science of astrology possible. There's the movement of the Earth around the Sun. Then we have the rotation of the Earth on its own axis. Okay, that's another movement of circular movement. On its own axis, the Earth will revolve. Then we have the slow wobble of the axis of the Earth as it turns. So we've got the movement of the Earth as it turns, but it doesn't just turn perfectly tholiiform, perfectly straight. It wobbles. And you'll notice this if you have a spinning top or a gyroscope. You'll notice that it has a wobble effect on the axis. Now, these three celestial motions were known in the ancient world and are absolutely central. And they were commemorated in many logos and symbols, especially those you see on churches and ancient motifs. Now, due to the wobble of the axis of the Earth, the sun, moon, planets, and constellations appear to move backwards through the 12 signs. The sun takes 2,160 years to traverse one sign of 30 degrees, moving 1 degree every 72 years. The entire cycle lasts 25,920 years. This round is known by astrologers and astronomers as the precession of the equinoxes. So this is getting a little deeper into the subject of astrology. There are 12 signs of the zodiac, and the sun moves backwards through them. Of course, when it moves backwards, we see from our Earth as if the constellations are moving the other direction, okay? So it's just a matter of parallax view and perspective. But the sun, every day, in fact, every morning that you go out and the sun rises, same thing every year. Every year at the vernal equinox, when the sun rises in the spring, the ancients realized that it's moving slightly eastward every time, just a few degrees or minutes of arc. It does not rise every morning or every year in the same place on the horizon. Charted over time, they realized that to go through a sign of 30 degrees, right, all signs of the zodiac are 30 degrees, for the sun to rise at the different spots in just one sign takes 2,160 years. That's 72 years to move 1 degree. So it moves 1 degree in the average lifespan of a man. This is very important to occultists, the idea that lifespan of the human is connected to this movement of the sun. But to go through all the 12 signs of the zodiac takes 25,920 years. That's called the Great Cycle, or the Platonic Cycle. There's different names for it. And generally, astrologers and astronomers know this, and they call it the precession of the equinoxes. But we want to show you how important that is to the unveiling of the mysteries of religion. Now, we have a thing called the horoscope of the Earth. I'm sure a lot of you have gone and had your astrology chart done. It's a fascinating thing to have happen. Now, we look at our chart and the astrologer will tell us, oh, this is your rising sign, and this is your sun sign, and so on. Well, the Earth itself has a chart. You couldn't have astrology without the Earth. I mean, we're all in the Earth. But how many have ever thought of the fact that the Earth itself has a chart? It has a rising sign. Now, in your chart, what the astrologers who are more exoteric may not have told you is that there is a descendant. If you have an ascendant, that's a rising sign, you also have a descendant, which is equally, if not more important, than your ascendant sign. So just bear this in mind. But when you go to the bigger level and you think of the Earth, we have the rising sign of the Earth, and we also have the descending sign. Now, the astrological ascendant is presently in the last few degrees of the sign of Pisces. Okay, so the Earth's sign is Pisces. Therefore, the descendant is in exactly the opposite sign of Virgo. That's because the ascendant and the descendant are on a straight line. They face each other perfectly in an opposite situation. So the position of the descendant is as important for the chart of the Earth as the ascendant is. We cannot understand the times we are living in or those to come unless we are familiar with the permutations of these astrological oppositions. And these oppositions are very important to the ancient world. If you even look at the symbol for Lady Justice in the tarot, or the magician in that strange pose that he's in with up and below, and the Pythagoreans and the Sophics said, as above, so below. They were trying to emphasize this idea that if you're looking there, make sure that you look to what's in the polar opposite. All things are connected. All things are in balance. We can't have Aries without the opposite sign of Libra. All signs are perfectly polarized. It's very interesting to notice these oppositions in astrology. In the tarot cards, we have card 3 and 4, Venus and Mars, the goddess and the god, the male and the female. And so it is on the astrological level. And as I said, as the sun moves eastward, backwards through the sign, it appears that the constellations are moving in the other direction. Now the tarot, one of the great secrets, we don't have time to get into it in this presentation, but I do in other presentations and in other talks and on the website and in various books and so on. I have always pointed to the fascination of the tarot. One of its most remarkable mysteries that's connected with the tarot is that the 22 major arcana are literally demarcations of that movement, that processional movement we've just been talking about. Each of the cards actually represent little Polaroids, if you will, or photographs of each of those ages. It must be some incredible cult that can encapsulate in one card all the happenings of 2,160 years. But that's exactly what was done. So all the way back from the age of Virgo, Libra, in fact all the way around, each of the cards represents an age of precession, a precessional age. Now again, we are in the age of Pisces, or we're at the very end of Pisces. The sun right now is at the very last degrees of Pisces, ready to move into the sign of Aquarius. That's where we are historically. In the age of Virgo, the pyramid was constructed. This is why in the present age of Pisces, its mirror opposite, antiquarian scholars and speculative laymen have been so interested in uncovering its secrets. Just giving you another anecdote here to show you how important this is in our daily life. It's not just the humble little personal chart that you get. Astrology has many other permutations. In the age of Virgo, that's why the Sphinx is there, by the way, representing Virgo. But what's a few hundred yards away from it is this pyramid. The pyramid and the Sphinx were constructed in what we know as the age of Libra and Virgo. That's many thousands of years ago. If each sign is 2,160 years, then you just count back 6 or 7 signs, and you'll find that you're in the age of Virgo and Libra. And it was ordered to commemorate this that they put a Sphinx there saying, here we are, the age of Virgo. But Virgo, as we've just seen, is the opposite of the sign of Pisces in which we're now living. That is why many people like Edgar Cayce and other philosophers have said that it would be in the age of Pisces that there would be this re-fascination with all mysteries Egyptian. I completely confer with that, because programs like this and the revival through Jordan Maxwell and myself of this subject of astrotheology are part of this process. There's a certain etheric connection in time. Time is not a linear thing. It is a very spiralic thing. And there's a symbiosis between these ages. Buckminster Fuller, Edgar Cayce, they said that the mysteries of the pyramid, the mysteries of all things Egyptian would come to light in the age of Pisces. So again, the hermit for Virgo, the moon for Pisces. Now in the age of Pisces, when the sun moved many thousands of years ago now, that's over 2,000 years ago, the sun moved into the age of Pisces. Well, the symbol for Pisces is the fish and the fish god. And we have in the age of Pisces the coming of the solar cult and the rise of Judeo-Christianity. That's why the headdress of the Pope is the fish's head, and why he wears the fisherman's ring, the ring of the fisherman. It's the age of Pisces. Now, competent astrologers know that the negative traits associated with the sign of Pisces, okay? So there's positive traits of every sign, every symbol. No symbol is inherently negative. There's positive and negative. But competent astrologers know that the negative traits associated with the sign of Pisces concern deception, vice, hidden agendas, mass delusion, and the misuse of spiritual virtue and power. So, in the age of Pisces, it was to be expected that the world would experience its share of these negatives on a macrocosmic level. And boy, has it done that. As the age of Pisces comes to a close, though, the deceivers know that the paradigm shift which will occur, which does not favor their machinations. This understanding has led them to make many subtle alterations in their age-old stratagems. The study and tracking of these expedient accommodations, prompted by astromantic and cosmological phase shifts, amounts to an entire subject in itself. So simply put, all this technology, the rise of technology, is a very Aquarian thing. The rise of certain New Age groups, the interest in divination and spirituality, is a harbinger to the coming of the age of Aquarius. The empowerment of females, which has still not really happened yet but is on its way, is also a part of that. But you see, the mythographers, these individuals who create whole mythologies, understand that this is also coming. And therefore they don't sit easy. They create new mythologies. And where's this all coming out of? Vatican, which comes from the word Vaticanus, literally meaning the place of the sorcerers. So just realize when you're talking about Vatican, you're talking about the place of the sorcerers. Tony Bushby says, Tacitus described Rome at the time as a place where every horrible and shameful iniquity from every quarter of the world pours in and finds a welcome. It's the product of all these cults coming together. And they were heavily into astrology. That's why the cross is used. That's why in Celtic countries you see the ring around the cross, representing the zodiac and the cross. Again, in the symbolism, you'll always see the sun back of the cross, because they understood that this was about astrology. And what of the age of Aquarius, when the sun makes its transition? Do the religions have anything to say about that? Well, remember, John 14, in my Father's house are many mansions, and I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, ye may be also. The age of Aquarius is said to begin in AD 2740, but of course, there's different scholars have different dates. However, as the sun moves towards the final degrees of the previous sign, the descendants of the great cults of power who are at the helm of the religions and governments need to make arrangements for change. As each age terminates, the appointed mythographers have to get ready to script new mythologies consistent with the complex symbolism of the coming age. Their work is analogous to the Madison Avenue ad man, only their hot product is literally the New World Order. The end of an age is always distinguished by orchestrated chaos and conflagration. This is the meaning of Armageddon. So end times, millennial angst, comings of new aeons, new ages, the passing away of old paradigms, the rescripting of new ones, the coming of a new world order, a new age of the world, is a reference to this astrological changeover. And each age is known in all the mythologies of the world to end in calamity. There's an Armageddon, an apocalypse, not of the end of the world, but of the end of the age, in which there'll be debauchery and iniquity. So as these guys get ready to vacate, not literally of course, but rescript their mythologies, change their masks, we better understand the symbolism. One of the most important things to also realize about this precession of the equinox phenomena is that when you study it, you come to understand how the art of prophecy works. Morning, noon, and night, you'll have to put up with the detractors telling you there's no such thing, it's all malarkey, it's all gibberish. There's no such thing as astrological prediction. There's no such thing as doing readings and whatnot. Well, the fact of the matter is, of course it's possible. As we've just said, the tarot is a depiction. One of its mysteries, one of its many mysteries, is that it's literally a depiction of all the ages of the zodiac. So, using the cards in that way, one can know what comes in different ages, using the symbolism of the tarot cards. Divination contains many secrets that we're not aware of. The 10th century Arabian historian and author Masudi says that on the eastern or Great Pyramid built by the ancients, the celestial spheres were inscribed. Likewise the position of the stars and their circles, together with the history and chronicles of past times, of that which is to come and of every future event. Also one may find there the fixed stars and what comes about in their progression from one epoch to another. That's right, on the pyramid walls, in the tarot cards that was created in ancient times to depict these astronomical events. In Ecclesiastes 1 it says, is no new thing under the sun. Is there a thing of which one might say, see this, it is new. It has already been for the ages which were before. That's right, nothing new under the sun.